This is Fedora 26 with the Cinnamon desktop. I like Fedora 26, but I don't particularly care for the default GNOME 3 desktop. I tried it, and I still don't like it. If you want to see some of the reasons I don't like it, look at my review of Fedora 25. However, I do like the GTK ecosystem, and one way of getting that without getting GNOME is to use Cinnamon. Now, in Linux Mint, Cinnamon is a fork of GNOME 3, but in Fedora it appears to me to be a substitute for the GNOME 3 shell. The only disadvantage of that is that it appears to me that Cinnamon is as resource intensive as GNOME 3 and Fedora, while in Linux Mint, Cinnamon seems to be less resource intensive than GNOME 3. One of the problems I had when I tried GNOME 3 again is that when I opened Simple Screen Recorder, on GNOME 3, the application window was bigger than the display, and I couldn't access these controls at the bottom. But in Cinnamon, as you can see, the application window is sized for the display, so I can access all the controls. Again, if you want to see the origins of this problem with GNOME 3, look at my review of Fedora 25. To get Simple Screen Recorder, I had to install the RPM Fusion repositories, free and non-free, which I did, and I also have a video on that if you want to look at it. Other than a few applications which I added, for instance, I added the VLC media player, and as I said, Simple Screen Recorder, and under graphics I added GIMP. But other than that, this is more or less the way the Cinnamon desktop looked. If you look under themes, window borders are arc dark, and you have various different alternatives, including arc darker, etc. Or you can go to the old-fashioned ones, Adwaita. The icons are Mint Y, and I believe by that they simply mean the folder icons. Mint Y. The controls are arc dark, and again you have several options there. The mouse pointer is Adwaita. The desktop is arc dark, and again you have various options. Now it appears to me that the other icons, other than the folder icons, look like the arc dark icons. I may be wrong about that, but that's what they look like to me. Now, this version of Cinnamon has the same hot corner options as you find in the Mint version of Cinnamon. And I have the upper left set to show the applications in the current workspace, and they both happen to be minimized, but it shows them anyway. And on the upper right, I have it set to show all 4 workspaces, and I have something open in each workspace. It shows the minimized as well as the unminimized applications. In workspace number 1, I have Simple Screen Recorder and the text editor. In workspace number 2, I have the character map and the calculator. Workspace number 3, I have LibreOffice Calc, and in workspace number 4, I have the file manager. So let's take a quick look at those last two. Notice that LibreOffice Calc has the dark theme. And it's version 5.3.4.2, the latest stable version that I'm aware of. And looking at the file manager, this is Nemo, the fork of Nautilus which you find in Linux Mint and which many people consider superior to the current version of Nautilus. Now there are a few things that are different in the Cinnamon version and the version of Fedora 26. It has the same essential repositories, but the Cinnamon version has a different package manager. It has the DNF Dragora package manager and also has a DNF Dragora updater as opposed to DNF Yumux, which is in the GNOME version. And it doesn't come with the GNOME software application that you find by default in the GNOME version. The DNF Dragora works all right. You have a choice here. All applications or groups, I'm just going to show them as all. Now you have a choice of to update, installed, not installed, and show x86, 64, and non-arch only. Now I chose the latter because if you don't do that, it will show the 386 and x86 64 applications without distinguishing between them, and you don't know which one you're installing. So if you're using a 64-bit system, make sure you select this. Otherwise, searching is very simple. GNOME boxes, and there it is. I'm not going to install it right now, but it's fairly simple to use. Once you've checked it, you just click on apply and everything takes care of itself. So it's a very simple package manager. Now if I wanted to install GNOME software, it's available. So let me do that and see if it works. Enter my password, authenticate, and there it goes. Do I want to import the GPG key? Yes. so it's installed. Shown here is just software. Now it may take a minute for this to populate. I'm going to make it full screen in the meantime. Now that took a while, so I had to interrupt the video. Look under audio and video. You see Ardor, Audacity, Banshee, GNOME Music, P2V, Video Editor. Those are featured. If I look under all, I get quite a few more, of course. I don't see OpenShot. I do see Simple Screen Recorder, which I've already installed. Let me go back to the beginning. And search for OpenShot. It doesn't find it. Let me search for Kdenlive. It does find that. There's no screenshot, but I have the option of installing it. I'm not going to install it right now, however. So it appears that if you don't like DNF Dragora, you can still use GNOME software. You just have to install it. Now this is the default desktop background, and I really like it, so I'm not going to change it, but there are others. First thing I'm going to do is go to Desktop Settings, and I'm going to get rid of these icons. I just prefer to have a plain desktop these days. Then if I want to change the top background, I can right-click on the desktop, go to Change Desktop Background. And under Basic, I find these. Not a lot, but they're very nice. And I like the default one, which is the default on all of the Fedora 26 desktops, to my knowledge. There are a lot of extras here, too. And this is F26, same default. And basically you have the same desktop options that you have with the Linux Mint version of Cinnamon. You can add desklets. Here's a clock desklet. And you can find more desklets online, of course, available desklets. Let me just show you the clock desklet. Click on Add to Desktop, and there it is. Now, in an earlier video, I showed how to configure the date and time settings, so I'm not going to go into that extensively, but just right-click on the desklet and then left-click on Date and Time Settings. Gives you a chance to change your location. Now it says use 24-hour clock. I'm going to uncheck that. Display the date. I'm going to check that. And there are other options, of course, by changing the codes, but this will do for now. It isn't displaying the date. Well, that part doesn't work up there, but it certainly works down here on the lower right-hand corner. Displays the date and the day of the week. So I could probably copy that code it's %A, %B, etc. Let me see if I can copy that. Use a custom format. All right, now I can copy that. Right-click, copy. All right. That's good. Now get rid of this. Click on Configure. Use a custom format. Right-click and paste. Aha! That's the easy way of doing it. So now I have the desklet the way I want it without having to look up a lot of codes on the internet. And of course you can move this around the way you want it. In closing, let me just reiterate that the reason I like Fedora is that it has very up-to-date software. Now, with Ubuntu-based distributions, the software first goes through a Debian until it gets to the Debian testing phase, which takes a while, and a few months before a new version of Ubuntu comes out, they freeze the Debian image, and they recompile a lot of those Debian applications to use in the Ubuntu repositories, and that takes a while. So by the time a version of Ubuntu comes out, the software is rather old, but Fedora has software that is checked out by its own community members and compiled specifically for the Fedora repositories, so it's more up to date to begin with. Furthermore, during the lifetime of an Ubuntu distribution, the specific applications get security updates, but they are generally not upgraded to the next version. An exception, of course, would be Firefox, which updates itself frequently. But in Fedora, during the lifetime of a Fedora distribution, the individual applications not only get security updates, but they also get version upgrades. So you get really the latest software for Fedora, and I find that very valuable. Some people don't want it. There are occasions when a new version of software is not as good as the old version, and of course you can always revert to the old version. But in most of the software I use, the newer versions are improvements over the older versions, and I really like having those. So that's the main thing I like about Fedora. And of course, having a $2 billion company like Red Hat as the sponsor does not hurt the longevity of the system. So if you want Fedora, and you want the general GTK environment, but you don't want GNOME 3, the Cinnamon desktop is a good alternative. This is XRAM Tech. Thanks for watching.